Well, very good afternoon and welcome along to this episode of the Lite Bite Lunch, which is, of course, our budget special. There's been a lot of analysis done. There's been a lot of searching through, trying to decide, was this a good budget? Was it not? It was arguably this government's most challenging yet. Despite having strong corporation tax revenue, care was needed not to destabilise inflation. Some people are even of the belief and have made claims to say this was a one eye on the election budget. We're going to ask today, did the Minister get the balance between easing cost of living stress and investing in Ireland's future right? Let's look at it this way. Spending was up 6.1%. The core budget itself was 6.4 billion, 1.1 billion of which is tax measures. The target is to have an 8.8 billion surplus. Great thing for Ireland's film industry, which has always had such a strong tradition. And if the film tax relief credits have been increased to 1.25 million, which is an actual increase of 50 million. But before we delve deeper into any of that, we'll talk about this. As a lot of you know, the Micro Business Awards finals are on next Saturday, the 21st, in White's Hotel in Wexford. So that's Saturday week, in White's Hotel in Wexford. There has 4 tickets have become available if anyone is interested. You can just drop us an email here, or you can email microbusinessawards@gmail.com, and we can go through all the information with you. As always, it promises to be an exceptionally good night. We have a lovely range of prizes going to be on offer as well on the door. And we will then that night, we will announce the details for next year's Micro Business Awards, which we will tell you all about in 2 weeks' time when we're back with another guest. So hopefully you will be able to join us then and take part in what I can promise to be an exceptionally good night. Now we'll get back to the main show. So we're going to take a long, hard look at the budget and what does it really offer. First thing I want to look at is the one-off payments that we're getting. There's going to be 3 energy credits of €150. So that's 450 total between the end of the year and next April. While we're starting to see a slight slip in energy prices, they're still substantially higher than previous years, so it's nice to see a slight fall there. There is going to be a double child benefit payment to help with the cost of living. Equally, those receiving the fuel allowance and social welfare are going to receive a €300 lump sum. Those on the living alone allowance will have another €200. And those in receipt of the carer support grant, disability allowance, blind or invalidity pension, or domiciliary care allowance are each also receiving a lump sum of €400. It should be stressed, these are one-off measures. These are not something that's going to carry on year, so we just need to be careful with that. All social welfare payments are going to receive a Christmas bonus in early December of a bonus week, and they're going to receive a further double week in January. There is also a support package for small and medium businesses valued at 250 million, and we will have the details on that when the full Finance Act is released next week. Other one-off payments that have been announced is free school buses for families with children in school, free state exams for another year, an additional 60 million capitalisation payment for schools. Then when we look at income tax, we're going to see the standard rate is increased by 2,000, which means until you actually earn 42,000, you're not going to be paying the higher rate of tax. I will mention, by the way, if you have any comments or you'd like to ask any questions during the show, please do just drop them in the comments and we will answer as many as we can. We have had a couple of emails in as well, which we'll come to a little bit later to try and answer those questions. In terms of tax credits, what you have, your personal employee, PAYE, and earned income tax credits are all going to increase by €100 each. So if you're in employment, you basically have an extra €1,000 you can earn before you will start paying tax. And the same thing will apply to self-employment. The balance has been kept. The universal social charge has been cut from 4.5% to 4%. That is the first reduction in universal social charge in 5 years. So it's well called for, but equally it has to be noted this was brought in as a temporary measure and should have been gone a long time ago. So again, it's an argument whether you believe it's a good or bad thing where things are at. The point at which workers pay the top rate, we mentioned there that the standard rate is increased by 2,000. So you won't move on to the top rate of income tax now until you earn 42,000. Equally, the entry threshold to the 4% rate has been raised. So you won't move on to the 4% rate until you earn €25,760. So again, that is very, very useful. It gives that a little bit more breathing space. I am going to go through some example figures later on and just want to do an overview before we start. The national minimum wage has been increased by €1.40 an hour to €12.70. This is something that is going to be extremely tough on small businesses. While your larger national, multinational businesses most probably can afford and have the profit margins to afford to pay this, for smaller businesses, this could be the difference and could very well result in a number of layoffs. And it's something we're going to have to watch over the first quarter and first half of next year to see just how much of an impact it has in terms of employment. And I'd be very interested to see, and will certainly be asking of the minister to actually be able to report back on if there are additional layoffs, where is it that this effect has been felt? Personally, I feel it'll be in the small to medium, even in the micro employment side of things, purely because the impact that it's going to have on those micro businesses. Something that slipped in very quietly in terms of the budget, and a lot of people didn't notice it, from the 1st of October next year, our pay-related social insurance, or PRSI, the contributions are going to increase. Now, it's a minimal increase, it's 0.1%, and that won't kick in until October next year. But again, it will have a small impact, both on employers and employees. As I've mentioned already, the 4.5% of USC is going to 4%. So let's take two examples. If you are earning $35,000 per year, in 2023, you earned $30,343, and in 2024, you will earn $30,365. So as can be seen there, the difference is you're going to be €22 better off. Those, however, on 46,000 will go from 35,993 to 36,765. So again, at 46, because of the change in the income tax rate as well as the universal social charge, there is a much bigger jump there. It was lovely to see some renter supports, and these are going to see the Help to Buy scheme extended till the end of 2025. The rent tax credit has been increased from $500 to $750 a year. And a really important fact, parents who pay for their student children to have tenancies in rent-a-room or digs accommodation will now be able to claim that rent tax credit. And the nice thing, and one of the things the minister should be very proud of doing, is he has backdated that. So you will be allowed to make claims for 2022 and 2023 in relation to that regard. Now, I believe we have a comment in there. Cheryl's just telling me in my ear. So go ahead, Cheryl, throw it up there. Yes, Maggie's saying never heard the PRSI was increasing. And this is the whole thing, Maggie, and this is where, until we see the whole Finance Act next week, we're going to be it's going to be a guessing game as to what is or isn't going to be in the very fine print. PRSI was mentioned right at the end, and it's something just that people should be aware of and be preparing at the back of their mind that for the last quarter of next year, you will see a very slight differential within your actual income. So let's have a look at the landlord reliefs that came in. Right? And a lot of people weren't too happy to see relief for landlords, but for the accidental landlord and whatnot, I think it's very important that there was some sort of reliefs put in. There is it's been organised over several years. For next year, they're going to have, they can disregard €3,000 of their total rental income before they pay the standard rate of tax. The following year, 4,000, and the year after that, so that'll be 26, will be 5,000. So that doesn't mean that they're getting that money tax-free. What it actually means is they will be taxed at the standard rate instead of at the higher rate. However, there is a very, very big caveat to this, and it's something that a lot of landlords will need to be aware of. If a landlord leaves the market within those 4 years, they will then be liable to pay back any incentive they have been paid in the years previous. So it is very, very important to remember that you need to have that you must stay in the market for 4 years if you are claiming these reliefs. Something that is long, long, long overdue, has been called on for many, many years, and I'm delighted to see we will now see it. Any female from the age of 17 to 31 will qualify for free contraception. It's something, as I said, that should have been done a long, long time ago, because contraception shouldn't be available only to those who can afford it. So delighted to see that. In terms of public transport, the 20% price cuts that were introduced are to stay for another year, and they have extended the half price rates for young adults to include up to 25 years old. Then when we move on to look at college fees, households earning less than 100,000 will receive a 50% cut in fees, bringing these down to €1,500. And for households earning over 100,000, there will be these will be 1,000 of a cut, bringing the fees to 2,000. In terms of cigarettes and vapes, 75 cents will be added to the box, or has already been added to a box of 20 cigarettes. And the minister also went on to commit to a tax on vapes from the next budget. An Garda Síochána are to receive up to 1,000 new recruits and 250 new staff. Trainee Gardaí are getting a huge pay rise. They will jump to €305 a week, which is up from the current 184. And there will be a 25% increase in overtime budgets. Again, we all want more Gardaí on the street. I think it's very important, though, to make sure that where all of these money is going to be invested is on the street. There's no point in bringing in guards who are going to be locked away in offices doing paperwork and that type of thing. This is where we need to look at moving to a civilian employee administration team. Obviously, you will still need all the correct vetting and all of that type of thing. And let's have more Gardaí out on the streets patrolling. Even where we are here in Ballinamoor, our Garda station has more or less become a part-time station because the officers there are covering other stations and smaller stations around the county when guards are in court or that type of thing. So we move on to social welfare and pensions. The weekly social welfare payments will increase by €12. The qualified child increase will increase by €4 to €46 per week for under 12s and to €54 per week for over 12s. Now, I would certainly be interested, and I would ask any minister to show me how you can meet the needs of a child for 46 or €54 a week. Really and truly, between feeding them, clothing them, trying to get them involved in sports activities or club activities. It's one of those he's doing what he can, but I would say if it was going to be a school report, needs to do better. As I mentioned earlier, those on the living alone allowance will receive an additional €200. The Christmas bonus will be paid in early December with a New Year's bonus in the new year. This one is a little bit of a bugbear of mine because a lot of people who are working won't get the luxury of a Christmas bonus because a lot of businesses can't afford it. And I would implore any business who can, they should certainly share that with their businesses. But something needs to happen. Like, it seems extremely unfair to have these bonuses going to people on social welfare. And again, I wholeheartedly accept there are some people on social welfare who are there through absolutely zero fault of their own. But equally, there are those who are third and even fourth generation social welfare recipients. And that's where I feel there needs to be targeted efforts made to give them a reason to want to get up and go to work, give them a purpose in life. And this is something I would be very keen to look at. I would be very keen to implore the minister to look at, and is something that if anyone has any ideas, as I am a registered government lobbyist, please get in touch with me and let's put together a package to submit with alternatives as a means of getting people back out. We're very, very lucky. We're at a very low unemployment rate. But my concern is, over all the years, the long-term unemployed figure hasn't decreased at all. And we need to find how to get people back out, wanting to work and back into the workplace. I had a conversation with somebody only this morning, and as they highlighted to me, because they don't have any skills going into a minimum wage job, if they go into a minimum wage job, by the time they take their lunch costs, their travel costs, etc., they're only minimally better off than if they're on social welfare. Plus, they have more time to spend with family. So the whole argument of that needs to be looked at, and it needs to be established. How do you incentivize getting people back out working? As we look at the cost of living, Minister for Finance Michael Magrath has proposed extending the 9% reduced VAT rate for gas and electricity for another 12 months. This is estimated to save an extra €90 for electric and an extra €62 for gas. When you add that to the €450 in credits, like in fuel credits, I think that's very, very generous for this year. Across the course of the year, if you base it just on electric with $450 and $90, that's an extra $540. That's just over a tenner a week extra he's given back to us. So in fairness, I think he's done all he can there, and he's stretched as much as possible. Minister Donohoe, as the Minister for Public Expenditure and Reform, said all houses will receive 3 energy grants over the winter. It's to be provided in 3 instalments, one at the end of the year, one very early next year, and a third one then in April next year. And again, for those on the fuel allowance, they will have an additional €300 lump sum paid at the end of this year. For those on the various grants we mentioned earlier, carers, disability, blind, invalidity pension and domiciliary care, you'll have your extra 400. And there will also be a double payment of the foster carers allowance made, and that there's commitment has been that will be paid this year. Child benefit has been extended to children aged 18 who are still in secondary school. So that, again, will be a help to parents who are there. The National Childcare Scheme hourly subsidy has been increased from €1.40 to €2.14. Childcare has always been a huge bone of contention, and it's something that a lot of people feel support was needed. I would also highlight that for the small schools providing this support, equally, they need support. They need at this moment in time, there are more and more of the smaller schools that aren't part of the big chains that are actually closing due to not having sufficient, they just don't have enough coming in to meet the costs that are going out. The home care tax credit and the single person childcare credit will also be increased by €100, and the incapacitated child tax credit is being increased by €200. A double payment of child benefit will be made to all qualifying households before Christmas also. The National Childcare Scheme is going to see a further 25% reduction in childcare costs, and something way, way overdue. The statutory foster care rate will be increased by the end of 2024 by €75 per week for children under 12 and €73 per week for children over 12, which will bring it to €400 and €425 a week respectively. Again, something that's been badly, badly needed. On the subject then of children, students in the first 3 years of secondary school will receive free books under the new budget measure. So that'll be for the first 3 years of secondary school, right through their junior cycle, meaning 770,000 students across primary and secondary school will get free textbooks and workbooks. The actual cost of that scheme is coming in at 55 million, so it's quite an extensive plan. Families with an income of less than 100,000, as we've mentioned already, will have the college fees reduced, as will those over 100,000, just not to quite the same extent. I've already mentioned this, the fee waiver on school transport services has been extended for another year, and the fee waiver for students sitting state exams has also been extended for another year. Something that I was over the moon to see, and then a couple of things I read yesterday about it, I'm back with more concerns. Funding has been granted for another 1,216 special needs assistants and an additional 744 special education teachers. So because this big block of funding has been made available, Special Needs Assistants Association came out to say that they are now looking for more money and that they need to be paid more than they have currently been. And it just worries me, is that additional funds going to be swallowed up in the existing ones that we have, when there's no question schools are crying out for teachers, full stop, but special needs assistants and special needs teachers are desperately badly needed. Moving back to the business side of things, 130,000 small and medium-sized businesses are to benefit from 250 million worth of supports. Again, before I get into the nitty-gritty, I'm going to wait and see the Finance Act when it's released in full next week to see how good or bad a plan that actually is. For those that have paid commercial rates this year, they will qualify for up to 50% of a refund, so that's quite good. I have Cheryl shouting in my ear here that time is getting against us, so we will keep it moving along as quick as I can. And the R&D tax credit is to be increased from 25 to 30%. So if your business is involved in research and development, well, then you'll be delighted to know there's additional tax credits going to be available there. The minimum wage is going to rise by €1.40 to €12.70 an hour. What difference does that actually make, would you feel, to the minimum wage? If you're on minimum wage in 2023, after you've paid your tax, your universal social charge, etc., going home in your back pocket, you have €20,788. From January, at the end of next year, for the same on minimum wage, you'll have €23,465, which is a difference of €2,677, right? Which, again, we're talking over €200 a month of a difference. So that will absolutely be beneficial to those on minimum wage. Again, as I said, my only concern is the impact it's going to have on small micro businesses. We know the climate has been very important to the current government. So a new infrastructure, climate and nature fund to be established. The new infrastructure is going to have 20 billion a year invested in it for 7 years, well, until it reaches, 2 billion a year for 7 years until it reaches 14 billion. This capital allowance scheme for energy efficient equipment is being enhanced for a further 2 years. The tax disregard in respect to personal income received by households who sell residual electric from micro generation back to the national grid is also being increased. The zero VAT rate on the supply and installation of solar panels is being extended to schools from the 1st of January 2024. So again, another really good initiative. The VRT relief for battery electric vehicles is being extended to the end of 2025. I won't get into a whole rant about electric vehicles right now. And again, it's not that I am anti-electric vehicle. For those that live somewhere that it works, great. The problem is, again, the lack of infrastructure for those living in rural Ireland, and they are the ones being penalised for not going out and getting these electric vehicles. The rate per tonne of carbon dioxide emitted for petrol and diesel will go up from €48.50 to €56 as of yesterday. The knock-on effect that's going to have is that forecourt fuel prices have gone up from by €1.28 and €1.48 to the cost of a 60-litre fill of petrol or diesel, respectively. So that extra €1.50 a week fill is already eating into any of the benefits that are coming down the road. However, as a means to try and offer some sort of balance on that, the increase in fuel excise of 8 cents a litre on petrol and 6 on diesel that was due at the end of the month has been postponed and will come in 2 instalments on the 1st of April and the 1st of August next year. There's also an increase in the current rate of carbon tax. It's been applied, so it's going to be €7.50 increase on the current rate of carbon tax per tonne for any fuel that actually emits carbon. This carbon rate up to 56 euros per tonne. So that's more or less everything. Of course, we've covered the excise on cigarettes. So I do want to say a huge thanks to the taxfairy.ie who have assisted us in compiling this. All in all, I think, given what he had to work with, I think it's fair to say Minister Magrath and Minister Donohoe did a pretty good job. There is room for improvement. There's a lot more needs to be done. And hopefully we can see the type of excesses they have been talking about. I hope it's given you a little bit of insight into exactly what the budget had and hid from us. We will be watching the full Finance Act next week. Unfortunately, time has caught up with us and we need to move on. We will be back in 2 weeks' time when we're going to be joined by Robert Fleming from marbleandtile.ie, telling us all how we can get the very best out of our polished concrete and marble work surfaces. Until then, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. I hope the budget update has been of some benefit, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Good afternoon.